Can we teach ourselves to sort of do that when we're in
I
this
think so.
hyper state of sympathetic?
Yes, I can. Yes,
Okay.
we can.
Okay.
I mean, and that kind of leads into what we can do about it. And so,
Yeah, that's
in
yeah.
that way, we can help ourselves when we're depressed, as well as anxious. And so, again, another reason why I mentioned that it's important to understand what the sympathetic response is doing to the body and where the blood is going and why the heart is racing and the mind is focused and narrowed and we're feeling jittery and tense.
Totally.
And so sometimes what we need to do is slow down, take a step back, and ask ourselves the question, am I safe right now? You know, is it all clear? You know, is everything going all right? Because if you're feeling threat, if you're feeling stress, then that's a message. And maybe it's telling you you need to pay your mortgage, or you need to turn the water off, or you need to check the stove, or whatever. But once you've run through all them checks, to ask yourself, is everything okay? Am I safe?
And even if you feel like you're creating this perceived threat, get yourself to a position where you're in a more relaxed state. You know, just physically place yourself somewhere where you can get to that state with the best
Absolutely.
chance, right?
Exactly. You know, that's absolutely true. And I think in that way, you create an environment, you put yourself in an environment where you can feel safe. Because I think that when you can't make that decision, then maybe it is because you're depressed and you're experiencing all this anxiety and it just kind of hangs on.
For some, it may be at home. Like for me, I raced home. For some, it could be the beach. It could be the park. It could be with a friend, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And so basically, when we can say to ourselves, I'm okay, and that I'm in a safe place, and that everything's going to be okay, and that's some of the self-talk that you can do that can help with this stuff. But to really know.
Yeah.
And sometimes what we need to do is talk to others. And so you talked about going to counseling and learn from them. And so,
Yeah.
you know, when you go to a professional, you basically trust what they say. And you may have some questions, but basically you're going to genuinely trust them and take their word for it. And then sometimes that gives us permission to relax. But I think it can help to have other people that you trust. It's what I call a trusted other. And it could be your wife, it could be a good
loved
friend.
one, somebody you feel
Absolutely.
safe with.
And I think it's very important to have trusted others.
So step one,
Yeah,
find a safe place, have some trusted others.
yeah. And then because if you perceive that you're safe, then it's kind of another default in the body. That basically, as long as you don't get any perception of threat, then your body's going to relax. It's gonna go into sympathetic.
Yeah.
But there are some certain things that we can do to help it along.
Yeah.
And one of those things, of course, is breathing. And that's another reason why I mentioned in the sympathetic nervous system, the adrenaline is stimulating the muscles around the lungs to breathe more rapid, just like the heart beat more rapidly. And so there's a correlation between our breathing and our heart rate. And I think that sometimes what we can do to induce a parasympathetic state is by doing breathing, it kind of induces us into that state.
Like in the PT world, deep diaphragmatic breathing.
Exactly.
Okay.
And there's a lot of reasons why that's helpful. Number one, in order to be able to do it, you've got to feel like it's okay to do it. You know, and if you're in an environment like, imagine when people come to see you, they trust you. It's a safe place.
And I'll tell you, I didn't even think about this, but you're bringing up these great points. First time I meet them, you know, I don't know what state they're in. I usually have them in a private room, lights down, on their
Good.
back, you know.
Right.
Once I see that they can do those activities comfortably. But I certainly wouldn't take someone the first time out into a crowded gym and have them.
Yeah.
So that's to your point.
Yeah,
Get to a
excellent,
safe
excellent
place.
practice.
Yeah.
Because you're basically treating them with respect, and you're appreciating, maybe they're not, but you're checking with them, and so they feel that sensitivity and concern, and that enhances the trust. I mean,
Great.
they should trust you as a matter
Yeah.
of course, but not everybody does.
Of course.
You know, and people that have a history of trauma basically have a hard time trusting at all.
Yeah.
Uh,
So number 2,
mm,
find some viable, resourceful breathing techniques, and I'll
Yeah.
put some stuff
Yeah.
on
Yeah, I mean,
your
I'm
bullet
not
points.
expert at it. I mean, I practice it, I teach it a lot,
Mm-hmm.
but I use it fairly often. And and I've learned it's important that when you notice that you're stressed out, then your pace of life is kind of accelerated, and that's what it's designed to do.
Yeah.
To hurry it up, to get there quick.
Absolutely.
You know, to respond.
Yep.
And so sometimes what we need to do is to intentionally tell ourselves, slow down.
Slow down.
Yep. And like, you know, sometimes my wife will tease me, and if I say to her something like, well, just relax, she says, I can't relax when you say that.
We've all made that
Just
mistake.
because you tell me to relax doesn't
Just
mean I can.
relax. That's
But
the
it's-
opposite one.
But it's different when you ask yourself, okay,
Of course.
I need to slow down. And so, and that's, again, that narrow focus that sympathetic response gives you is to sit back, relax, and widen your horizons.
Yeah.
And so perceiving safety, you're more likely to be able to experience that parasympathetic
Great
response.
point.
Okay?
Great point.
And so by breathing, you're actually mimicking the body what is happening in a parasympathetic response. And so your heart is going to respond.
Totally.
The other thing that happens when you do diaphragmatic breathing that you talked about is it actually presses on the vagus nerve. So when you lower the diaphragm, it squishes your guts and presses on that vagus nerve and stimulates a parasympathetic response.
I did not know that. That's
I learned that
amazing.
in one of my trainings.
That's awesome.
It's good, and that's kind of what I do when I do some diaphragmatic breathing. I kind of imagine as if I'm pressing a button telling myself to relax. And I think it helps.
That's a great cue. Yeah, you just
Yeah.
really use your diaphragm, and it's almost like you're pressing down. You can think about pressing down on that
Right,
vagus nerve. Okay.
right.
All right.
You know, there's lots of breathing apps. I personally like iBreathe.
I breathe.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's on an iPhone, and there's a similar one
For,
on the Android
for-
system.
Yeah, sure.
And what I like about it is it has a way, it gives you a cue to inhale, hold, exhale, hold, and these different counts.
Okay.
And you can go into it and actually adjust the amount of time that you do each.
Nice.
And there's also some canned ones that are already there.
Right.
For example, there's box breathing. And box breathing, basically, it says box because you've got the 4 steps. You got inhale, hold, exhale, hold.
Okay.
So it's the same number.
Yeah.
And it's usually 4 seconds. But on iBreathe, it's actually 5 seconds.
I remember you showing me this stuff, and it helped. I hadn't thought about it
Good.
for years. Yeah, it did help.
Yeah.
And everybody has a smartphone now, you know.
That's right.
That's sort of why I'm producing a lot of this, because I
Yeah.
think there's just, there's no excuse. There's so much technology out there. We could find it.
It's true.
Find the proper
Just got to know where to go.
channel. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, so I like that one because number one, there's some that are already set, but you can also adjust it to
Cool.
however you want. And I
Okay.
think that it's good just to try,
Yeah.
and because it's a learning thing. So like we talked about earlier, it's a skill.
Cool. Totally.
So practicing breathing is a skill. And at first, you're not going to be very good at it. It might not even feel right. I know the first time that I used some breathing, I felt like I was choking. I wasn't getting enough breath because I wanted to breathe in or breathe out. And the machine that I was using was telling me, not now. And I didn't like that. But as I practiced it, then I got better at it. And at some point, it kicked in magically. You know, it become automatic.
I got to a point where I set an alarm and I would do it twice a day.
Oh, good.
You know, and it helps
Yeah.
tremendously. At
Well,
least
and you bring
for
up-
even a short term, it's great.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a really good point, and this kind of harkens back to what we were talking about earlier. What are some of the things that you can do that are non-pharmacological that actually can even help?
Yep.
And I'm not here to say that that's absolutely going to help because, I mean, no two people are alike.
Well, of course, yeah.
But I think that that's something that can help.
And you know what? I think equipping individuals with various tools, you know, hopefully one is bound to work. Maybe a couple, maybe a handful.
Well,
right?
and make a really good point that it's often we need a collection of things. You know, and I think of it as a toolbox. You know, fill your toolbox with as many as you can.
I call it the same thing in my practice.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if something doesn't work, try something else.
Exactly.
And I'm a really big believer in once you identify the problem, then it's a challenge to deconstruct it and really get to know it and understand how it works. It's another reason why I mentioned that sympathetic response versus the parasympathetic.
Exactly.
And so when you get to know it, then the better you understand it, the better you're going to be able to create solutions.
And you know, when you're in that highly depressive state and you're having difficulty concentrating and such, that's why seeking professional guidance so that they can hold your hand, help you sort of step outside yourself, to try different techniques. Did you really give this avenue a viable try? Did you really try this? Why don't you try this? Because sometimes when you're lost in your brain,
It's true.
right?
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a more direct guidance, if
Yeah.
you will. You know, try this.
Trusted guide.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
how I looked
absolutely.
at it.